Well, good evening and welcome everybody. I thought I will give us a overview of how my long game went. Okay, this is 1.5 hours each person. It's a time-consuming game. I was white, and we got into the Nims over Indian, and right away I went into a line I normally never play, which was Queen Check. Normally I would play Bishop D3, but when you have a lot of time to think, you start thinking of ideas. And this bishop b5 idea is actually not optimal. Okay, it's not optimal, and we end up into this sort of a line. And I thought after queen a3, hey, at least I'm stopping him from castling. That's got to be something, right? But it turns out that structurally, this position is better for black. And I think the main point why it's better is that the knight can come here, and if needed, the knight can even go back and come here. And this bishop can also come here and seize this diagonal. So this outpost in particular is a key problem square in this structure. Whereas for white, even though the knight could come here, it's not a permanent outpost. So, and this thing is marginal benefit. It's short-term marginal benefit. So that's important to understand. My opponent didn't play the optimal move. So rook b1 helps a little bit because it doesn't allow him to seize this diagonal as easily. And here he made a second suboptimal move. So he made two suboptimal moves in a row here. This allows me to trade the queens, which is also not helping his cause. Counterintuitively, one would think that the queen seizing this diagonal is such a nuisance, but it turns out that it's not such a big deal. And that now the position is dead even between white and black. So we deliver a check for good measure, and the most important reason for that check is to find out where he moves his king. Is he going to go here, here, here? There are a lot of different options, and depending on where he goes, we have more information on how we want to play the next move. So knight f3, for example, makes a lot more sense in this scenario where you have this possibility. And so that's what we indeed play. But it's a bit of a hardwire act because the c pawn is a little bit vulnerable, and if we take the time for rook c1, maybe we give up this diagonal again. So to balance the equation here, we play c4. Okay, and now of course if he takes, then we triple up his pawns, and that's got to have some compensation. But now this is the position here. And now we gave up this open file because even if he does take it, he doesn't have any penetration spot. So we're good. We're good. And in the meantime, we are putting pressure down on the doubled pawns. Okay, he's got these doubled pawns, and that's the main weakness of his position. And now I wanted to clarify what his plans are with the knight. And we ended up with this clarification. And right over here, I decided it was time to close the door on that king. And this ought to be a slightly better structure for white in principle. That was my evaluation. The computer analysis says that this is still dead even between white and black. No real edge either which way. But yeah, I thought I had a small advantage here. Turns out it was dead even anyway. So we again take control of the open file and now connect the rooks. And now here's the point where black starts to make a few mistakes because black is still trying to get a better outcome. He's not accepting the reality that I have pretty decent control of the open file. He's trying to get a better outcome. And we push his rook here. His goal, of course, is to double up the rooks, so that I capture and help him promote his pawn, and then these two pawns can do something. But obviously, I'm not going to do that. And once he comes here the second time, then I just snip it off. And now this pawn's become a huge liability, which is going to be difficult for his king to hold on to. Um, that being said, a5 is not optimal. I should have already started moving the king in this direction and just use the rook probably to hold the e3 pawn. But I already played a5, and now he got his king in the way. And initially I was thinking that if he does that, well, don't I just win the pawn and hold this pawn? But it turns out it's not so straightforward. These endgames are rather tricky. And right over here, I was thinking that, okay, once this happened, I will come here, then he will go there, and we will go back, then the rook will come in, and then, I'll go up and we'll trade rooks, and something will happen here. But when you're in an endgame, you have to think about your winning plan. You have to see what your opponent's counterplay resources might be. And essentially, the point is that for me, I need a second passed pawn here. This is not enough. This is not enough. It's well blockaded. I need something to happen down the middle. So e4 is the key move, okay? For black, if he plays f5, then it becomes that much harder to play e4, and therefore that much harder to make a passed pawn. Now, having played e4, we can eventually play e5, and should he capture, we will get a passed pawn. And should he not capture, we still end up getting a passed pawn eventually, most likely anyway. So that was the decision over here. Basically, a decision to give up this pawn while ensuring that we have good long-term play with this passed pawn here, or going to be passed pawn. And now his rook gets into weird positions. H4 is a kind of prophylactic move. It's a move that wants to maintain control, and a move that understands that the game is eventually going to be decided by these pawns on the side. It's also a move that aims to stop him from playing g5, because now if we capture, then we get a passed pawn easy. So he's trying to make it happen either way. So we play h5 now, preventing that. And now he's running short on ideas. And here he makes I think, somewhat, I mean, it was already a pretty bad position, but this just made it a bit worse. And now we capture with the d pawn because this f pawn plays such a big role. And at this point, it's really hard for black to play. His king is totally trapped off. And our king just makes slow progress, and eventually even traps the rook, just to be a little bit clinical about it. And finally, he resigned at this point. Of course, rook goes back and cuts off the thing, and we make a queen here. So anyway, that was the game. Hope you enjoyed it. I think the most critical takeaway here was how we handled this endgame at this point. And I think the strategic choice of cutting off the king and giving up the pawn and being patient and just materializing something here is critical. And e4 as a key move that understands the endgame principles and beats him to the punch with it. All right, cheers.